Hello. Welcome to the church community for GOD. My name is Mitchell Buchanan. I'm on the pastoral care team for the church. I get the pleasure and the benefit of sitting with these sermons and rewatching them and getting to chat through with a couple of the preachers, which is just so fun. So we're going to be chatting through Laurie Kagay's sermon on work today. This is Laurie Kagay here.
That's me.
She is professor at the Institute. She is Dean of Admissions. Does that sound right?
VP of Enrollment Marketing.
I messed them
it's all
up.
good.
Dude, you made that up.
You put them, squish them together. There's keywords there.
When Jeff Sherrod was in here, I was like, Jeff is like, I said president or vice president, and then Greg is just like, this is all wrong. I'm like, grace and great grace. You know, it's like, but Laurie gave just a fantastic sermon on work. We'll be going through that. We're also joined by Jason Carpenter. Yeah, who is also a preacher, just a great member of our body who does so well to bring practicality in everything we learn from the Word. I appreciate him so much. And so, without further ado, I think I just am a very weird person. Laurie's sermon was on Colossians, and if you haven't listened or watched before, we're going to have her kind of either give some background on this is why I approach this text or some thoughts behind it, give some main points of what she wanted to leave us with, and then we'll just chat, see how we can see God's Word breaking into our lives in a practical way.
Do you want me to read the text too?
I think that's great. It never returns void. Come on now.
That's right. All right. 3:18 through 24. Wives, be subject to your husbands as fitting to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this is your acceptable duty in the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, or they may lose heart. Bondservants or slaves, or as I interpret it, employees, obey in all things your employers or your masters, according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of heart, fearing God. Whatever your task, put yourselves into it. Another translation will read, put your whole work as if your soul depends on it, as done for the Lord and not for your masters. Since you know that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward, you serve the Lord Christ. So I think that Colossians 3:23 was my mom's favorite verse ever. She said it a lot to me as a kid. I think as I've grown up, it has been something I say to my kids a lot. I do think it's like if I'm thinking of theology of work, I'm like Colossians 3:23 is like it's up there, it's in there. Yeah. But I think I wanted to look at a little more of the context of it, and I think that it's interesting that it goes to household codes right before work codes, and so or work expectations. So I wanted to explore. You know, these things go together. Paul's writing from prison, which to me alone is humbling. From prison, he's like, can you get your houses in order? And can you, like, be better at your job? Like, from prison. He's like, seriously. Like, stop treating your boss like that.
I'm not there.
You know?
I still know there's tons of issues.
I still know. But he links these things together. There was a couple years ago, Greg and I had a conversation about this passage, and he talked about the observation, like, that they bleed into each other.
Right.
So I think that's what I want to explore in my sermon. How does a healthy household that understands authority and promotes heart, because that's what it like the warning to fathers, do not provoke your children or they may lose heart is the warning, and then in the further verses it says you're supposed to work with all your heart. So like this is the goal, is to be people of heart, to be people who have a healthy enough life and even family dynamic that when they come to work they can put their whole selves into it. So I wanted to explore the connections between, in essence, a healthy household, the responsibilities we have, wives and husbands, the responsibilities we have as parents, and how either as spouses we come to work or as children becoming future employees, how they're gonna handle that. I think as a mom myself, this is like part of my concern. Like, if you're not faithful with these chores, if you're not faithful with these things, you're going to suck at work. Like, and so like, I am kind of always, cross-engineering like issues I see as to like, I want them to not be that way. And so, anyway, that was kind of my premise to explore this. Some, I think, key points I had was there is a strong authority, sub theme. Some would argue it'd even be the main theme. I think you have to have a healthy understanding of authority to be good at work. You even have to have a healthy understanding of authority to be people of heart, I think. You can't be, your heart. When you lose heart, it's very hard to work hard.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is letting us know sometimes that happens at home. Sometimes you lose heart because your life sucked at home, and then it's just like, it's a whole thing. So that's when I brought up like examples of the academy or the institute, and like seeing these children who just have heart is like, it's the best. But that's how God's people are supposed to be in the world. They're supposed to be people of heart.
Yeah.
And the result of being people of heart is you're supposed to provide really good work. And that really good work, Paul tells us, not just because your boss is watching, but because we see that God is watching us. We're supposed to work in such a way that it's like he was receiving the work. So that seems like the highest level of excellence, we could note. And
people of, you're saying, I know being people of heart, I think I don't know if it's synonymous, but you really reiterated, I'm just clarifying, is that like really basically being full of focus, and like our full heart is like, hey, I'm fully intent and fully focused on this task? Or is it like the enthusiasm and like the passion that you're bringing to it, a combination? I was trying to, even rewatching the sermon, you really hit on it, but I don't know if it was really like spelled out definitively. I'm like, hey, this is where I'm like nuancing this.
Yeah, I think it can be both of those things. If it's like it's your focus, then people who have trouble with focus are gonna be like, dang it. But like there is something when you're pure-hearted, in the Bible, even that's someone who doesn't have mixed motives.
Right.
That's someone who's not thinking about all the other things they could do. And I think it also has to do with enthusiasm, passion, someone who brings their whole self to the job. That's why the translation I really like is as though your soul depended on it. I'm like, I feel like that's the strongest way you could say it.
Yeah.
As though your soul depended on it. That's how we're supposed to work. And then, the final thing in the passage is it's whatever your task. So it's like, it does not say, once you get the job you like, you should really do good.
Yeah, like you're sweeping the building or you're making decisions for everyone.
It is just whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's like the challenge too, is you're not going to someday be awesome and full of heart when you score your dream job. Like this is whatever the task, this is the way we're supposed to be. So it does have some to do where we left off last time with Jason, like the, I'm missing the word now. The like, mood we bring to work, not the mood.
Disposition.
Disposition. Thank you. That we bring to work. So it has something to do with that, but it also says like it doesn't matter what kind of work.
Right.
Because I think people would be like, this job isn't going anywhere. I don't know about the company. I don't like my boss. Like those all become excuses for then you offering bad work. And this verse is very hard to deal with that kind of an attitude, because it's just. It doesn't say if you like the task, if you like the boss. It doesn't say any of those. It's just like whatever the task. God's watching you.
Yeah.
You serve him.
Yeah.
Even in our context, we're saying employee-employer, which I think is like such a great framing for like, this teaching. But for their day, even if it is slave and master, like, hey, I don't like being enslaved and I don't like this work. I don't like, it's like to think of it in that literal context, like, hey, even if you are enslaved to do a task, like it should still be done unto the Lord, where it kind of removes any other complaint anyone else may think to have. It's like, well, you're not conscripted to the task and like you must do that. So
it's offensive.
Yeah.
But it's
I felt offensive when I just said it like that.
Yeah.
I felt like an idiot. But there's a connection from husband's wife, I think, throughout those dynamics of from the household, husband, wife, to like the greater household with children and parents, to the dynamic of employee, employer. Is there, should we see those as all interlinked to some degree, where if a coworker is having a hard time at work, very well it could be a very specific task that it's like, hey, this is a frustrating element. They're not signing this thing. I needed them to sign. It's 2 weeks late, whatever the circumstance. Or should we, if someone is consistently having issues, should we kind of be made aware of like, hey, there's likely another relationship in their life that is like disjunctive? Or is that an interpretive jump we really shouldn't make?
I mean, I don't know that the text makes it. I don't know that it's untrue. Like if someone's not doing well in their, you can kind of tell at work, and it's probably more than just the work. So like it's probably like often true. I don't know that the text is like that way. Yeah. I do think I took it more like building blocks kind of, you know, like even because it goes from children to employees. Like I do think there's a reality, like if you have a bad employee, they really might not have been raised in such a way that was complementary to hard work or the kind of work you're asking of them.
Right.
So I think there is some of that. Like we're all, again, creatures of our culture, and home is definitely what's setting the standards for the way you are. So I think that was more like my challenge a little bit. Like, if even if any of us want to benefit from really good work in the world, like we have to do some work even at our home to start young.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a cool part of the passage is like, there's going to be areas of your life where no one knows what kind of person you are, but God is always there. So like,
for sure.
And that happens even in a workplace where you have a boss. You still have those moments where the cat's away, you know, the mice play or whatever. But God is near. So like you're supposed to work as unto God. It kind of eliminates all the excuses, you know. And I think that's really, you know, profound.
Yeah, there's a place where us as human beings where we can key into work and feel like you're not that you're so focused that you lose sight of everything, but it's kind of, it can feel so separated maybe from other stuff we do, where it's like, oh, this doesn't affect so-and-so, or like, oh, this is just a problem I'm having right here. But it's like, I think this dynamic of even the connection between them and knowing that, hey, as you're raising their kids, there's a connection to that obedience to a parent, to like that type of obedience and success and excellence that you would find at work as well. Where if we are just thinking, oh, this is just a one-off problem, or, hey, my kid has a hard time listening, but it's not, you know, they do everything else pretty well. You know, like I think if we are separating these out into different buckets of like, I just have a problem here, or my kids have a problem here. It's like seeing that this runs the gambit of life from like as a kid to like the most personal relationship with a husband, wife, to like this lifelong venture we all have as workers and like bosses or employees. Like there's going to be fragmentation along the way if you're just seeing this of like, oh, we'll like brush this aside, you know, like, which that's what the way you're sharing it made me think of that, of like having an awareness of what's going on because it affects so much. And I think the progression is so great because you see the dynamic like Laurie brought up where husbands and wives, there's a special dynamic there where it's like, hey, it's not just what I say goes. There's a relationship as iron sharpens iron, and it's not that you submit in everything, whereas children and employees are grouped closer together where it's like, hey, even if I'm not agreeing with this decision, that like there's obviously back and forth in the workplace. You brought up with one of your kids, there's not an expectation to be robots. I don't think from employee to employer, but there's an expectation that the work should be done in excellence, and there should be a commitment and an obedience, I think, to that task, which I think is interesting when we like look at it that way, because it's the dynamic of parents and kids and bosses and employees. It can feel offensive of like, don't treat me like a kid, but it's like, I'm not treating you like a child, but it should still be the same framework of how a child and a parent interacts. Like,
yeah, because children are children for a while. Like, children is not treat me like I'm in elementary school. Like, you know, your children get older, but you still have an authority with them. Your children have ideas, they have input, they have opinions. Like, and so our natural growth as a human being, like even prepares us to enter the workplace, I think, in that way. I mean, yeah, that never feels good to be treated like a child. But it's also like fathers don't provoke your kids. Like, and that'll provoke a teenager if you're like, you don't know anything, you know, like just shut your mouth. Like that'll provoke a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like I know there's like I'm sure a phase and moments in time where it's like, because I said so, that is all you get.
Yeah.
But if you're like investing in your kids, there's also going to come a time, even outside of, that intense moment where you're like, do you know why I said that? Do you know, do you have these things? And like those things help, like not provoke.
And like, make that connection to work. If a boss says, do it because I said so, and there's like force behind it, it can feel like a kid, but we could reflect of like, hey, just like there's reasons a parent would say that, it's like, there's probably reasons why things have fallen to the wayside, or like I'm not doing something I should have done. And it's like you can balance that interaction in a way where I think even the parent-child can inform a better way, not just to receive that, but to have like a context that, goes beyond just that work moment. Cause it's so easy to just be like, he ticked me off, I'm like shutting down, but it's like, hey, like just as I treat my kids and there's a reason I get intense, or there's a reason I'm like stern at moments, it's like, if that happens at work, it's not that I'm the worst employee ever, or that I'm on the brink of being fired, or that they're a bad person. It's that like there's a task that's not done that needs done.
Yeah.
Like the work kind of like gets elevated in a way where it's like there's an importance here, which I think Laurie highlighted a lot of like, hey, it's important to complete the task. It's important to do it with excellence, and that's like the boss, the parent, both have a responsibility of like, hey, what I'm telling you is important, and like this objective that I'm telling you, we need to do it, and it's like, I think to err on one side or the other with, I think a mentality at work is like not going to go well. And I think this linking them helps to give some healthy ways that I can either interpret those like bad interactions, whatever it is.
And there's an associative weight that comes along with that authority that like a husband or a father or a boss carries.
It's not just like
it's not like they're doing it because they want to spite you.
I like
they're
power,
bad
so
people.
that's why I'm making the call. There's also like a reality. Like you hold a certain position at work, you're the one that goes to jail if something goes wrong. You know what I mean? Like there's like various levels.
There's levels.
Like,
there's levels.
Husbands like carry a different level of even like shame, or like I let this happen in my household. Like that's. So it's not just like they're the boss because they want the power to do the thing. Yeah. I think even the passage is like noting a really healthy dynamic, because like it's like never treat your wife harshly. Like that's the condition. That's what's given to you guys. Never treat her harshly. To the husbands, like or to the fathers, don't provoke them.
Yeah,
it'll go on in the next chapter and like give, in essence, to every boss, it's like God's watching you.
Yeah.
So it's like they're never
right.
God's watching you, and don't be unfair, because it really sucks when you're unfair. Like, so they have conditions on theirs too. We didn't get to all that because we're focusing on the 3.3.
Yeah, because it breaks down if the boss is unfair. Like if you're getting the scriptural instruction to do what your boss says and to respect their authority, but then the boss doesn't wield that authority responsibly as if the Lord's watching, then like the whole thing is messed up.
Yeah. Everyone is doing their work unto the Lord. It's like every part of the chain is like, if we're all have that as that is our that's our focus. That's like who it's for. Now it's like our, we're working for our boss, but it's like, it's not that, hey, this, like Laurie brought up with Greg, if I'm pleasing the Lord, everyone else who really cares is also going to be pleased. Like, because that's kind of the intent we have going into it.
For sure.
And it says like obey in all things your masters, but it's not like because you're working to them. Like it's still like you're working under the Lord.
Obey because
do
you
what
need to
they
get
said.
paid to get.
Do what they said. Know that God's watching you.
Right.
And he's on the other side of your service. So to me, it's like a very balanced communication. It's not like, because it's showing like there is some respect and a reality to this. Yeah, your boss says something, you need to do it. But also know God's watching you, and God cares about the result, the excellence of what you do.
Right.
In any job. So it's like, yes, it gives the boss something, which is specifically, you should do what they say. But then it's like, yeah, very real. Like, God is watching you. God cares about you. He's on the other side of whatever work you do. You serve, like, that's where I ended. Because it's just a powerful, like, final statement. You serve the Lord Christ. And it's like, that is your end all.
Right.
But, like, that's the statement where, at least, the pericope I went over ends.
Yeah.
Like, so everyone's clear. You serve the Lord Christ.
You want me to be a robot, Mom? It's like, serve the Lord. You will find life, through that.
Yeah. And that's because the promise is from the Lord. You'll receive the inheritance from him as your reward. And I think that's, like, very cool for us, too. Because, like, as good of a boss as we could have, if all of your, like, worth and what you bring to the table, you're like, is wrapped up in some appreciation gift they're going to give. Like, it's just always going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm just not.
Christmas
not
vacation,
always,
Jelly of the Month
but it's
Club.
Like,
That's all I thought of.
Exactly. Jelly of the Month Club. Not always going to disappoint you, but, like, it only satisfies for so long. I can say that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think appreciation can be wonderful, and I've felt appreciated, and it does feel wonderful. But then you go another year, and you're like, am I still appreciated? Like, your boss is never going to know you as well as the Lord knows you.
Right.
And so the inheritance coming from God is like, he can do certain things for you that your boss could not ever do.
Right.
Because he knows you, because he's God, because he works in, like.
Right.
So I think that also allows you to, like, be full of heart at work. I think when people are so wrapped up in, like, pleasing their boss, it just gets, like, high strung and like but they're always then discontent because the boss is a human being, and it's like, no, God's watching you.
Yeah.
When you did that task, did you think God's watching? Like, what does he think of this? And they'll be like, no, I just did what he said. Okay, well, that's not enough. That's like one step, but there's more.
Yeah.
And that more is, like, I think what allows us to be full of heart people.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
I was thinking about you, Mitchell, because I'm like, I think you live this very well. Like, you noted, like, I don't really care what the job is. Like, I'm going to do it. But, like, you do. Like, if it's fall festival, if it's an event for the Institute students, if it's hosting people at your house, like, you do things with a lot of heart and full of excellence. And I think that's why so many people are, like, blessed by you, because I'm like, I don't work, like, in the same office with you, but I'm never, like, I've just not really had experiences with you where, like, you're like, I don't feel like it today. Like, he's normally like, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna, like,
don't talk to anybody from California. Stay in your office, Laurie.
Right.
Comment below, California.
Or you might say it, but then you still deliver.
Yeah.
Like, which is also just being human, I think.
Yeah.
Like, ugh, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. But then you still, like, choose to do the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're perfect. I'm just saying generally I know you to
Right.
be someone with heart and someone who, like, isn't.
Well, I totally think that is true, and I think something that your sermon challenged me with on the other side of that is that I run on inspiration a lot. So if I'm inspired to edit a video, or it's like a slam week, I get really inspired and, like, I'm in the moment. I can feel, like, limitless energy.
Yeah.
But if I'm not inspired, like, you had brought up a consistency of, like, kind of like not just, like, finishing the task where if that's the role or that's what's needed, but, like, a consistency of, hey, at all times the Lord's watching, where it's like, if I get uninspired on, like, whatever thing it is, it's like, can I kick this under any, like, doormat possible where I can do this next week? And it's on some level, I think it's, where I need to mature and grow. And I think I have to some degree, but not all the way. But it's those people are super helpful and beneficial as well, where it's like, we're one body together, where if someone is, like, full of passion and, like, hey, if I get this vision in me, I can do a lot. And it's like the people who are steady no matter what, of, like, I think the dynamic of me and Kristen Binnicker on the PCT team, I tell her, I think she is frazzled at me a lot. And I'm like, I think whatever the problem is, I think we would tackle it from two different positions almost always. So then it's like the fall festival, she's like, hey, how are we looking? I'm like, it's going to be good. And then, you know,
you
it's
do
like
need someone like her.
the days are ticking down. She's like, I'm having a list. We need to do this. And I'm like, yes, we do. And then it's like,
That's
it ended up
real.
being good. But I think, you know, iron sharpens iron. We all benefit one another. So it's not just like, hey, the people who can like, you know, Craig Duffy, if he decides that he wants to do something, can literally do almost anything. But like he, you know, we're one body together where it's like we need people to provoke that out of Craig and to let him know like, hey, this is a need. Can we get that from you? And so it's like this in a work context, it's a thing where after talking through it or meditating on it, it's like no one's an island in and of ourselves. You know, it's like all these are relationship dynamics, husband, wife, parents, children, employer, employee. Like all of us need another to like bring these gifts like alive and to like see them come to fruition. Because if one of us thinks like I can tackle all this on my own, or like, hey, I'm going to be the person that does it, like we're going to miss the mark in a way that is not going to be edifying or glorifying to the Lord, where it's like we all need someone to, you know, give a balance and even to support where it's like, hey, where we lack, someone can pick us up.
Yeah.
So
I think where that kind of goes back to like the singleness of heart. Because like if you're just fully applying yourself to the task,
right.
God's already given you specific gifts that are different than the person next to you. But those gifts are all needed in where they are. But where the magic is where everyone is able to apply their hearts, not be like, but I'm not doing it like him and I'm not as good as her. Like then that starts to like break away at the heart, like the power of just like mission mode, full of heart. Let's do this. But yeah, it's not like you said, they're all relational things.
And my full of heart is like, how can we add another station to the fall festival, and how can we get
we explode
how
creativity?
Can we make this more? And then Kristen Beneker's full of heart is like, if we can accomplish everything we have, like, you know, it's the diligence of making sure it's all done. It's like both full of heart, both like, you know, different like dynamics and like both together can like produce something that's life-giving. And I think
that's a great example.
Thank you. We are quite different. You're right. I did give a speech for her at Tristan and Maria's wedding that she did not approve of, and it was fantastic. No, every element of work is a team dynamic, and I think our church community, I think, reiterates that quite a bit. And I think we bring up examples in every sermon of like, I'm working with this person, doing this with them, and it's a work that we need to do it together and need to find, I think, that unity and like the vision of like being full of heart together with other people. Because when I think there's been dynamics in our community where there's people who like lead a sphere or a program, it becomes so personal when you're in it all the time, and it feels like no one else wants to do this, no one else, it's like I'm the only one that's taking care of this. Or it's like, hey, you know, I do slam a lot, so then it's like, hey, Jason said he'd be a small group leader. And I'm like, that's just for 1 hour. Can I get somebody to help me make a pin mega come down from the ceiling? That's all on me. Like, you can get in a mode where it's like, hey, if that's where I'm focused, that other people aren't helping like they should. And it becomes like this thing where you're trying to be excellent for the Lord, but you kind of get embittered by other people's.
I think that's where prayer comes in. Like prayer, talking to the people that are making you, you know, mad, both of those things. But like, you have to become a spiritual person. That's like, because I had this conversation the other day. Someone was just so defeatist. And I was like, it was like any idea I had to help. They're like, not going to work, not going to work. And I was like, this is rough. But I was like, are you engaging it with prayer? Like, are you like inviting God in? I was like, we have to believe he's given us enough.
For sure.
And he's here to help.
Yeah.
Let's thank him for what he's given. And it was like not prayer solely, but it was like prayer and looking around you that there are people to help.
Yeah.
And like, because sometimes we don't even make a compelling ask because we're just like burning in our hearts.
Right.
And we're like, no one's going to use me anyway, so I'm not going to say this right now. You know, like, it's like,
yeah.
But if you pray, like you say it before God, it helps calm you down so that when you are in that situation where people don't want to help, you know, you can make a clear articulation and be like, guys, hopefully not tears streaming down your face like it always happens to me, but whatever. Like, but to be like, but all that happens because it's like, it's all a mess inside. So that act of prayer like helps us to work through it.
For sure.
And then be able to look at our friends and be like, I need your help getting this thing drop out of the ceiling. Like,
Right.
you know this one part. Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
dude.
For sure. I think kind of end here, just try to touch on it, because I know you brought up like it's part of being like a mature person, which I think in the end, a lot of these are maybe not predicated, but if you're a mature person, I think in all these dynamics, you can kind of have a perspective and like have a knowledge that like, hey, I need to voice my needs to my employer, or like if I can, you're saying just like pray and communicate like, hey, I'm totally off today. Like, can you give me like 30 minutes to get back on track, and then I'll do X, Y, Z. Like every boss I know, particularly mine is a good boss, it would be like, that's totally great. Like, thank you. I feel better rather than like watching you struggle through an hour and a half of like,
Right.
you know, like being antsy in your chair and like clearly like bothered by like what's going on. And I think there's a maturity there where I think for people in our community to know, like we are such a close-knit community, we have such great opportunities to work together, to serve together, where I think there can be like a pressure, like a tyranny of the they, where it's like, hey, I don't want to bother someone, or I don't want to say like I need something different for my job, or I'm having a problem. And I think there's like, I'm thinking of a specific example where someone's like, I want to be a team player, but it was to such a degree that they felt like they even couldn't say anything. And it's like, if we are mature and we're working towards like being mature in Christ, and it's like, we need to be the kind of people where we're exemplar employees and employers when we can just talk about what's going on and authentic in our lives of like, hey,
Any healthy team.
Right. You're asking
communicates.
this, like,
Right?
you're asking this for me, like, I cannot do this. Like, is this a problem? Can someone else do it? Like, you know, or, hey, I need this much more money. Or it's like, hey, you're only working 10 hours. I can't pay you as much as I am. Like, I think having those moments together where we're a living body, and like, if we can, I think, have that assurance from God that like, hey, we're all on the same team, you know, in this church body. Like, no one is like, you know, no one is being so harsh that there can't be an authentic moment of conversation. And I think in relating to work, that it's like, if we're doing it with excellence, we're doing it unto the Lord, whatever your situation, be authentic and be real. And it's like, there can be a life-giving conversation on the other side. Because I think everyone I know that's connected with this church body is striving with their whole heart to be a good employee or a good employer. So like when we get jumbled in our minds, I think of, hey, I'm hearing the judgment they will probably have on me. It's like, well, you're short-circuiting this process of like, hey, I'm blameless before the Lord. Let me tell you what's going on. And it's like, I know more than anyone, this is hard to do, to admit failure, or like, hey, why I'm not doing a thing. Like, I struggle with this at times with my job, but it's like, I think getting over that like lump in your throat or that like pit in your stomach of like, hey, here's where I've messed up. Can we figure this out together? That it's like, we can find a healthy work dynamic, even in the midst where we aren't mature people. I don't want to just end on my dialogue. So if you all want to contribute to that, I always feel weird.
I don't know that it like demands, like that this can only happen if you're mature. I think it only gets better with that. But I think I've met young people who I wouldn't call like necessarily mature, but they have a great work ethic and a great attitude. And part of the reason they have it is they have like an understanding God's watching me. I've even heard some of them like were touched by this sermon series and just noting like, I didn't really like my thing, but then y'all did a work. One of the students, one of my favorites, she was like, I didn't really like my pro dev thing, but she's like, then y'all did a work series. Now I'm all convicted. Now I like my job. Like,
Laurie, I have been seeing you as a fairy godmother. I get it.
But yeah, I think it's a decision. Like fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? Fear of the Lord is a principle in this text. Like this is where it starts. Yeah, a fear of God, and part of that fear, like not being afraid, but recognizing He sees me, He cares about me, but He does see everything. He sees my integrity in what I'm doing. Right. And then I'm going to choose to believe His word, believe what it says, believe that in Christ there is no condemnation, that I am in a place of freedom. Yeah. Like, so I don't think it's like you have to be mature to live this. I think it probably only gets better. Yeah. Like, you know, in those ways. But God redeems and God helps and God, you know, fills in the gap in those ways. But I think it does come from a decision of like, I'm going to fear God. I'm going to believe He's watching me and everything I do. I'm going to I might mess up, but I'm going to try.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and I'm going to put my whole self into it the best I can. I'm sure I'll get better tomorrow and it'll be different or whatever. But like,
Because
it
Yeah, 'cause
is
the
a decision
expectation
in
isn't
that way.
flawlessness. It's because that would be unrealistic.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't think God expects that of us. He can't, like a parent doesn't expect their children to be flawless.
Yeah.
But you do expect them to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then learn while they're trying to do things
Right.
with all their heart, you know.
Yeah, and I was gonna say when I was jumping in, like it is a decision, you know, like day at a time, but it's a decision to give your whole heart in whatever way you're gifted. So it's like, I think that's a great, reminder of like this isn't for the completed person who is, you know, perfectly understands their boss's dynamic and how to work it. It's like, hey, like we've all been given, you know, a task where we all have our lot. So it's like, if I am making a decision to do it with my whole heart, and like I am doing it unto the Lord, that it's like there's going to be fruit on the other side. And it's like, I think regardless of where we're at in the spectrum of either our personal health or mental health, or like where we're at with even our work history, it's like, hey, I'm new to this job. It's like, all right, here's where you're starting. Do all you can, you know, with like this vigor in your heart, like this drive to please the Lord. And it's like there's going to be so much added to you, and like that's going to grow out of this. So, this is so great. I love this sermon. I think it's fantastic. I think a double header of listening to Laurie's grit with the work sermon right behind it, like that would be some goodness too. So, is there anything else y'all want to say? I think this
That's
was
good.
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
nice
Thank you guys for joining us, listening. We pray that this is beneficial for you personally. This is beneficial for our accountability groups, where we can discuss, hey, what does it look like at my work?
Yeah.
Who am I trying to please? What are the dynamics like with my kids, with my spouse, with my employer? Because in all those ways, we see work, we see how it contributes to how we approach work. And there's so many lessons we can draw from here. So I pray this is great conversations. Listen to it, talk about it, have fun with it. Thanks so much. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time at church.
Bye.